my loves. Welcome back. Welcome to Module 3 of your Emotional Eating Masterclass. You should be so proud of yourself that you've made it this far and are diving head on into this work with me today, because it's not for the lighthearted. It's not for the person that wants to take the easy way out. It's not for the person that wants a quick fix. This is for the person that wants real lasting healing and real lasting change, because, we don't need emotional eating, we need emotional healing. So it really does go down to a healing level, and most people aren't willing to do that work. So I'm so proud of you for doing it and being here and listening and having an open mind to yourself and to what I'm going to present to you today, because this is not common held philosophy, right? A lot of times we just think that it's a matter of willpower and why can't you just control yourself around food? Why can't you just figure it out? Why can't you just do what it looks like everybody else is doing? But I would argue that most people have funky eating behaviors. Most people have a emotional relationship with food. Most people do these things, but most people don't recognize it, right? And so we're here to recognize it. We're here to shine awareness. We're here to understand ourselves on that deep level so that we can move forward, so that we can be the best version of ourselves, so that we can heal all of this stuff. And then we're not wasting so much energy on it, right? It's not something we have to consciously think about all the time, and we can put that energy that before was guilt and shame and just planning and thought and all of this angst almost, and we can put all that energy into something more productive, right? And so we went through all the circumstances. We figured out in video 1 how our eating behavior looks, right? What are maybe those situational triggers and what our gut reactions are, right? We figured that out. We figured out in video 2 how we want to feel around food and how that looks and how that is different from where we are today. And I hope that you took all of that to your journal. I hope that you made use of the workbook that I've provided for you and really just written it down and kind of worked through those situations in your head and how do I really want to feel, and why don't I feel that way, and how can I start moving in that direction, and all of those kinds of things. Because the more you take it to paper, the more you're going to have those aha moments, because it allows this kind of conversation between our subconscious and our conscious mind, right? And to kind of become more aware of things that we're consciously not always aware of, right? And I want you to do the same thing with what we're talking about today, because this is what I consider to be the work, right? This is what I consider to be the most important part, because until we address what we're going to talk about today, the things called belief seeds, and I'm going to go full on plant metaphor on you, the more we address that kind of stuff, the more it's lasting change, right? Because to go into my plant metaphor, so you have this plant of emotional eating, right? And a lot of times that willpower, right, that you should just be able to figure it out, we'll just snip off the top of that plant. Maybe we'll pull the fruit off, right? But that plant is still alive. That plant is still growing. That plant is still thriving. And so really you've not done anything. You've just snipped off that plant. So it's going to take a little while before those fruits come to bear and the leaves pop out and the flowers and whatever, right? It's going to take a minute for that to happen, but it's going to happen. You didn't remove the plant. You didn't kill the plant. The plant's still alive, right? You've just bought yourself some time, I guess, right? And also, coupling on that is your funky eating behaviors are like the different parts of the plant. So where there's one, there's usually at least a few, right? So there's like the fruit of the plant could be like binging tendencies, and the leaves of the plant could be like that compulsive feeling, right? That I just have to like shove it all in my face right now. And the flowers of the plant could be some other behavior, some like eating out of FOMO, like we talked about, or whatever. So there's probably a few that you have, but they all kind of come back together into the same plant. So it's all kind of the same idea and the same belief seed generally that culminate into this big plant. And so to really make any kind of lasting change, we have to get down to the roots, right? So that's what we're going to do today is figure out what those belief seeds are, where they come from, and why they are there. It's all about how you created the beliefs, or how your circumstances created the beliefs that you now carry on. And those beliefs manifest. Like this is the premise of my entire theory, right? That your funky food behaviors are just a manifestation. They're just the outward action of what you believe internally about yourself, about your life, about your circumstances, right? And so in order to be able to change any of that, we have to get back to the beliefs, to the seeds, to all the stuff in here, right? To be able to create awareness and address and kind of understand and show compassion to that child version of us that picked up those beliefs, that picked up all of those things that are now manifesting as these, kind of unwanted behaviors, right? So, belief seeds. Okay, so a belief seed is the situation, circumstance that you internalized as a belief, right? And we hear this concept a lot when it comes to money mindset and self-growth and like abundance kind of work, right? But I really feel like it pertains just as well to our food behaviors. So the way you form a limiting belief is something happens to you when you're a child, right? Someone says something, it could be like an off-the-cuff comment, or it could be, a pattern or a belief that they carry that now they've passed on to you because of the way they are with you, right? And mine they sound kind of silly, right? As an adult, when I tell these stories, I kind of feel a little odd about them because they're kind of silly stories. But for me, it internalized really big and impactful. And so I'll share them with you. These few small stories have really determined my worth, the way I feel worthy as a person, the way I in turn show up around food, right? So a lot of my funky eating behaviors has to do with comforting and not feeling and numbing and those kinds of things, right? But the situations that caused those feelings are kind of silly. So the first one, I grew up, so my mom's Canadian, and I'm half Canadian, I'm a dual citizen, and so we would spend every summer of my life growing up at a family cottage in British Columbia with my family and my mom's one sister's family, right? And which was great, right? It was really great to, at that time, I felt like I had really close relationships with those cousins. It's a beautiful place, very enjoyable. But my birthday falls during that time frame. I'm a summer birthday, August 14th. I'm a Leo. And so my birthday fell in the summer while we were at the lake with all of this stuff. And so because of that and because of whatever, I was always told that my birthday wasn't about me. Like, I was allowed to have cake. I was allowed to have, like, a little celebration around dinner. But my cousins and family were very apt to tell me that the whole day was not about me, and that just because I wanted to do something and just because it was my birthday didn't mean that that's what everybody else wanted to do, or that that's what everybody else had to do, right? And that in turn created a lot of weird feelings, A, around my birthday, and B, around being heard, right? Also, another, and my stories go back to summers at the cabin with my family, right? Like, that's kind of the central theme of my stories, which it sounds so ridiculous. Like, as I'm telling you these stories, I feel so ridiculous because it seems so trivial, right? The second story is about sandwiches. Ridiculous. So, summers with my cousins, the cottage was at a lake, so it was important to my mom and my aunt to have, like, sandwich fixings ready for us kids to be able to, like, whip ourselves up a sandwich, right? And so they would make these big batches of, like, egg salad and tuna salad, and I don't like mayonnaise. I think it's disgusting. I always have. And so everybody else liked a lot of mayonnaise, or in my opinion, a lot of mayonnaise in their egg salad or their tuna salad, right? And I don't. And again, I was basically told, suck it up, it's not about you, too bad, like, everybody else, you're the minority, therefore your voice doesn't matter, right? And so these stories turned into solid beliefs that I was insignificant. They turned into solid beliefs that if I stood up for myself, that I was seen as disrespectful, I was seen as annoying, that my feelings were irrelevant and a pain in the ass. So, I directly translated that into turned that into eating habits that would cover up my feelings, right? So instead of expressing my opinions, my desires, my wants, my whatever, right, I would hide all of that under what we discussed is that nice, soft layer of cookies and whatever other things satisfy that kind of feeling for me, right? So that feeling of validity, that feeling of indulgence, that feeling of instead of being squashed down, I just eat all of this food and I could fill myself up and, like, I could feel like I took up space almost, instead of being this small, shriveled little version of me in the corner because I didn't want to upset anyone, right? I didn't want to be seen as disrespectful. I didn't want to be seen as irrelevant. So I would just pile it on. It was much better to hide than to speak out, and much less than feeling it, right? So what's your belief seed? What are those circumstances? And they might be like mine. They might be ridiculous to a grown adult to tell those stories, right? It might feel like it's so irrelevant of a story, right? Like, I think we often feel like, especially if you're familiar with doing this work, whether it's like money mindset or like business stuff, or just like how you changing how you show up in the world, if you're used to that kind of stuff, you kind of have an awareness of where this comes from, and that it does kind of seem silly, but what your conscious mind picks up, and there's no arguing about it, right? Like these might come from belief seeds that seem more significant, or they may come from little silly ones like mine, but that doesn't discount the belief. That doesn't discount what you felt, because your feelings are valid, your feelings are real, and you feel them, and that's okay, like it's okay for you to have those feelings because you're human. We have feelings because we're human. And to pretend that we don't and to do anything other than allow those feelings validity just for being there, right, is a disservice. It's a disservice to everyone, right? So, moving on. I find that all belief seeds tend to kind of backtrack into two things, right? And really, these two things are really just one thing. Numbing or self-sabotage. And really, self-sabotage is a form of numbing. So really, all belief seeds, all of these beliefs that you have built up about yourself and how you should be in the world and what you should be doing and all of the shoulds come back to numbing, right? So for me, I don't want to feel disvalued. I don't want to feel irrelevant. I don't want to feel inadequate. And so I'll pile all of that food on top of me. I'll just compulsively, anytime I feel like there's no control to be had in the situation, that my voice doesn't matter, that nobody's listening to what I have to say, when those feelings come up, my inclination is to shove it all down my face, right? Does that help me move through those feelings? No. Did it take a long time for me to even understand that that's what it was? Yes. And maybe that's what it is for you too. Maybe you have some more layers. Maybe you haven't quite gotten down to that seed yet. So it's not that you have to go around carrying that seed. We're not digging it up and carrying it, saving it for later, right? We're going to dig it up. We're going to acknowledge ourselves. We're going to be aware of that pattern, that habit. And maybe this process takes a really long time. Maybe it takes a few weeks, maybe it takes months, maybe it takes years. But the more we are aware, the more we are able to show up for ourselves, the more we're able to witness ourselves in those moments and identify and be like, oh, this is what I'm feeling. That's why I'm reaching for all of this food that I don't necessarily need and feel now. That's why I found myself face down in a bag of cookies. That's why I'm on the couch Netflixing and just mindlessly eating, right? You'll begin to see the patterns and understand that it's pretty much always comes back to this kind of numbing concept, this ability or this inability to just sit with yourself, sit with your feelings, sit with it, right? But the more we're aware and the more you do the, oh, I did it again yesterday. I'm doing it right now. Oh, I'm about to do it. And then you can stop yourself. But that whole process doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow thing. Like it's healing. It's literally healing yourself from the inside out. And so you cannot expect that to happen overnight. You wouldn't break your leg and go do somersaults the next day, right? It takes time. You have to wrap your leg up in a cast. You have to elevate it for a while. You have to take it easy. And so the same thing happens here. It's not like, oh, we dig up the belief seed, problem solved. It's, oh, I've dug up this belief seed. Now watch how I can witness myself doing these things. And then I can witness myself sooner and sooner and sooner and sooner until it's maybe just kind of this thing you just kind of have to keep half an eye on, because it's there. It might not ever go away, because your memories are your memories, but it doesn't have to be the thing that defines you any longer, right? We don't have to keep ourselves small by this weight of food because we had this moment in our childhood that kind of imprinted on us in a funky way, right? I want to talk now a little bit about the primitive brain. So the primitive brain, right? We think back to our ancestors. Let's think about the cavemen for a minute, right? Our brains then were a mechanism to keep us safe. It's literally the world's oldest safety mechanism, right? Our brains were designed to fight or flight, to keep us from the saber-toothed tiger, to keep us alive, to keep us fed, to keep us thriving, right? And our brains really haven't changed too much since then. Our brains are still afraid of change. Our brains are still trying to keep us safe. And in our brains, change equals death, right? So if you think about the situations that would come up to our ancestors, like change meant a predator was after you, a change meant maybe you weren't able to eat with your family, change meant all kinds of like life and death kind of situations, right? And that's really not our reality today, but our brains kind of still think it is. And so all of that to say that we wouldn't develop habits. We wouldn't create these neural pathways for anything unless there's a payoff. Our brains want to keep us comfortable, right? They want to keep us safe and comfortable and cozy and all of these things. And so for habit loops to form, there has to be a payoff. And so I think it's important for us to stop for a minute and just acknowledge yourself for developing these funky eating behaviors, because there was something that you gained from them. And there's something that you can learn from them. So maybe they kept you from feeling things that you weren't able to feel at that time, right? So maybe something traumatic did happen to you. And maybe these behaviors kept those feelings numbed for a reason, right? Or maybe you weren't in a place in your life where you could have handled dealing with this kind of internal stuff, right? And so it's really easy to just kind of like want to slap ourselves on the wrist and be kind of mean to ourselves about it because we allowed these things to be created in our minds, right? And we allowed these habit loops to form. But I think, and I talk a lot about in the Mindful Nutrition Workshop about giving yourself grace. And so this is a part of the process where I think that it's important to remember that and give yourself grace, because digging up those belief seeds is not comfortable, and it's not comfortable to look at yourself and witness yourself and sit with yourself oftentimes, right? And so give yourself credit for that and know that there was a payoff. There might still be a payoff, but it's where does that scale tip, you know? Like where is it okay for you to sit in that uncomfortability and feel the feelings and recognize the things in yourself in order to move forward. And not everybody's ready to do that work, and I'm really proud of you for doing that. So lastly, really quick, I want to just say that to live our most vibrant lives, right? To live our lives at the fullest, at the most capable we are to live up to our soul contracts and all of that stuff, we have to be willing to learn about ourselves. So we have to be able to look at that mirror and witness ourselves. So we have to be able to take a look at our habits and our history and our past and all of the things that have brought us right here to module 3 and learn from them, because this has to be a learning endeavor. This has to be someplace where we're going in as much as we're going forward, right? And we can't expect to be happy all the time. That's not the human circumstance. That's not the human condition, right? Like, there has to be that give and take. There has to be those different shades in between the black and the white, because that's what makes life worth living. And so it's okay to have these feelings. It's okay to let them bubble up. It's okay to sit in the uncomfortability of it. What's not okay is to bury them all the time. What's not okay is to expect yourself not to have these feelings. What's not okay is to diminish them. Maybe don't sit with them. Maybe don't carry them forward. Maybe don't throw them in your backpack and go on a hike. But it's important to allow yourself to feel those feelings, because you're feeling them for a reason. They come up for a reason, and they're here to teach you something. They're here to show you something. They're here to act as that mirror. So you have to allow them to do that, and you have to allow yourself to do the work, to acknowledge all of the things that are coming up for you, because that's you doing the most miraculous job of healing, right? Like, that has to happen. And I think that I think it's the same with our food behaviors, right? Like, you can't expect to go on a diet and to live like that forever, right? And so, and for a lot of us, I think that that's kind of how we ended up here, right? We thought that we could just go on some diet and it would just slap a Band-Aid over the things that we feel, or the things we don't feel, or the things we haven't lived up to, or the whatever mumbo jumbo, right? But then we don't stick it out. We fall. We find ourselves emotionally eating again, and then we're like, why? And then then we internalize it, when it's not a feasible expectation anyway. Like, nobody wants to live like that, and it's not even possible. Like, you're allowed to have your life. You're allowed to live your life. You're allowed to enjoy it, and you're allowed to enjoy food. It's just we want to understand that part that happens after the enjoyment, or beyond the enjoyment, or even sometimes during it, or that place where we're convincing ourselves that we deserve this, or whatnot, right? I've told this story before. Actually, I want to tell you 2 more little stories. I have this habit, right, of going to the grocery store and buying myself a treat every single time. And my treat ends up being pretty much the same thing. I'll go into the little discount section of the grocery store because I can justify it a little bit better. I find the good cookies on discount and I get them, and then I eat them. But I do that every time. Like, that's not bad. But when I'm finding myself doing that all the time out of this, like, compulsiveness feeling, this I deserve it feeling, this, like, grasping, needing indulgement, like I just need a release kind of feeling in my life, that's where it's sticky, right? And is it fair to say that I should be able to overcome that altogether and that I should never do that? No, that's not what I'm here to tell you. Like, obviously, I'm not saying give anything up, but I'm saying learn how to identify within yourself why this is happening, so you can sit with those feelings without needing the manifestation of the action, right? Without eating the cookie all of the time. You can sit in those feelings without the unideal food behavior that before was like a sandwich, right? Like you couldn't pull it apart. It's like sandwich cookies stuck together. But you will, the more you stay in this stuff and the more you stay aware and conscious of this stuff, the more you can show up in those situations and sit with the feelings and not have it end in this guilt-ridden emotional eating situation, right? You work to a place where you can feel the things without the food, that you can just witness yourself. So that's going to wrap up today's video. I do want to mention real quick that if you'd like to work on like the tangible tools to allow yourself to do this witnessing in your day-to-day life, you want to get in the mindful nutritional workshop, because there's a few tactical things in there that were kind of created to help you navigate food, but I find really help you do this internal work as well. And it's kind of a 1-2 punch. So, within the Emotional Eating Masterclass, I'm going to teach you not only how to lose weight with a few simple principles and how to maintain and sustain and all of that stuff, but I'm going to teach you how to use those principles to do this work on the daily, to sustain this work so that you do find lasting change with it. And it's really exciting. So if you're interested in joining or just getting in more information on the Emotional Eating Masterclass, if you want to get into that, go ahead and reply to this email that this video was sent to you in, and we can chat about that. And if you're already in the Mindful Nutrition Workshop, or if you decide to jump in it, there's a bonus module to the Emotional Eating Masterclass, Module 4, where I'm going to talk about how exactly to use those tools to do this self-witnessing and do this awareness work and really show up for yourself in a healing way, because this stuff transcends food. I say all the time it's more than food, that it's not really about food, because it's not. It's about your feelings. It's about what's happening in here and in here before, during, and after those bites of whatever your jam is, right? So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope that I've shed some light on your food behavior, and I hope that you take so much away from this. I know that this work has really transformed my life in huge ways, and I hope it's done the same for you. Make sure you're jumping in the Emotional Eating Masterclass hub and sharing your takeaways, questions, comments, concerns, and breakthroughs, because I can't wait to hear how this masterclass is going to change your life, because I know that it's changed mine, as I said. So I'm holding so much space for you, so much love for you, and as I always say, go out there and love your you, because that is what it's all about.